Now we will open the floor for questions. First questions I'll just ask Ms. Tara Krishnaswamy. You made a wonderful presentation with the data and all the details, in fact, which highlighted, in fact, the women empowerment in Tamil Nadu. So whether it is gross enrollment ratio or any other thing, Tamil Nadu ranks much higher than many other states. And even in Tamil Nadu, the Dravidian movement is known for taking steps for women empowerment. The women's voting rights, that is women's suffrage, was given by the Justice Party in 1921. That is on July 1st, we celebrated the 100th year. And the other issues which we can talk about is the self-respect marriages, Sowmya Reddy Thirumanangal. Basically, self-respect marriages, people may think that it is to oppose the religious ceremonies or it is to oppose only the upper caste hegemony. But it is also another way of women's empowerment, because in self-respect marriages, the bride and bridegroom are treated equally. That is the other one. Likewise, reservations in local bodies, panchayats, which was given by DMK government, various other welfare measures. But still, on the statistics presented, the number of MLAs or the number of legislators coming from Tamil Nadu is far too less as compared to many other states. What do you think the reason behind it?
Thanks for the question. I'll try to address that. And related, there's two other questions that have come up to me on the chat. I'll try to address that as well. See, politics and success in politics is a life cycle like anything else. We are sitting here and asking ourselves, when we ask ourselves, why don't we have women industrialists who start companies, right? If you want to ask that question, then you need to understand, in order to be an industrialist who starts a company, you need to have a network that will enable you to be a business leader. You need to have access to capital that will enable you to invest thousands of crores, for which you need to have collateral, you need to have a network, you need to have the backing and the domain expertise, so on and so forth. So one morning, it is impossible to become or to see hundreds of female industrialists. It can only happen if you have a history of educating women, and you get more and more women who go through college studying the kinds of subjects that can help them be business people and industrialists. And then there is enough wealth creation for the women. So there are all these steps, that wealth, and then the agency to invest that wealth in whatever they please, as opposed to family telling them. Today you have women who are rich, very few, but you have them. They don't necessarily have the ability to invest that wealth. Even women in politics in Tamil Nadu don't have the ability to say, I'm going to take my money and go run for elections, right? This is what I'm going to do with my money. So in politics, if we want to see successful women, then the best example to look at today is the Biden-Kamala Harris team in the US. And the reason I say that is because when a Mamata Banerjee wins an election, you get 40 female MLAs winning with her, right? Mamata has created that environment where she isn't the only one woman winning it. There's 40 other women winning with her, which is a large number. Again, nowhere near the 33%, but it is 14%, is way higher than the other states. And she didn't do it only for this election. She was able to do it in 2019 for the Lok Sabha elections, when she gave 42% tickets to women. She fielded 42% women. And then a huge number of them won, which actually bumped up the total in the Lok Sabha. And prior to this, in the last assembly elections as well, she fielded a large number of women. Now, how do you get to field a large number of women? You must encourage women as cadre. You must give them responsibilities in the party. And that is why I go back to the Biden-Harris example. When Biden-Harris was sworn in, you have women being, given portfolios. First of all, there's a critical mass of women in their equivalent of cabinet. And you see women being given portfolios that are core portfolios for running the country. In fact, if you spoke to the women, they told you that during the Biden campaign, there was a rule that you can never enter an election campaign office. This is unheard of in India, unheard of, right? You can't enter an election campaign office, which means what? Every village, every town has a campaign office, right? In Tamil Nadu, every village, every town will have a DMK campaign office. No campaign office can exist which is not 50% women. So unless you encourage 50% women to be cadre, unless you give them responsibilities at the village level, at the constituency level, at the booth level, promote them as district presidents, ensure that they have an equal stake from fundraising for the party to, managing the money as treasurers at whatever levels, and then, in the election campaign, the manifesto, and actually going out and campaigning, not just door to door, not just drawing anti-CA columns, actually at every level. If you don't encourage women, you're not going to have a critical mass when you come to office. Today, even if the chief minister wants to make half his cabinet as women, he can't, because you don't have as many women MLAs and experienced ministers. Why don't you have them? Because you haven't given enough tickets. Why aren't you able to get tickets? Because you don't have enough women with experience running constituencies and districts and booths and running elections. So this is all connected. And therefore, when you talk about why didn't a Jayalalitha do it, or why didn't an Indira Gandhi do it, in order to do that, you have to grow the party over a period of time to a point where you have enough women. Now, the question is, why should women leaders alone do it? I think it's an entirely wrong expectation to think that only women leaders are responsible for promoting women. We must remember that in India, we have a Westminster style democracy, which means that we vote for parties, and parties bring forward an agenda. We don't vote for individuals. And parties swear on the constitution, saying that they will abide by the constitution, which basically says you cannot discriminate on the basis of religion, on caste, on region, on language, and gender. Which means that if you're nominating, giving tickets to 90%, 95% men, somewhere or the other, you're failing in your duty. If you as a party are only, promoting upper castes within your party, you're failing on your duty. It doesn't matter whether your top leader happens to be of a certain caste or not. If you as a party are discriminating against scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, it doesn't matter whether what the top guy is or girl is. What matters is, as a party, since you're sworn on the constitution, what you do. And the same goes, it doesn't matter whether a Jayalalitha is at the head, or whether some other male head is running the party or running the state. They are the chief minister, they are the party head for everybody, not just the males, right? So by asking a question, why don't women promote other women, you're doing two things. A, you're acknowledging that the party and the men exist only to promote men, right? As opposed to a democratic institution for all. And the second thing you're acknowledging is that women come into politics only to promote women. That's not true. The reason I entered computer science, and I am a manager, I'm a director at a software company, is not only to hire women. Of course, I want 50% women, but my job is to actually make sure that the assignments given to me, I deliver in a great way, that my teams are built well, right? That they are robust and they're able to, that is my job number one. Oh, by the way, I also want to hire 50% women. So women come into politics to succeed. They come in to make sure that everybody has water, that everybody has, a great labor environment, that everybody has a great business environment. Now, to expect that women alone should promote women is acknowledging that women have no other business in politics except to bring other women. That is not true. I think we've got to temper our expectations and hold everyone accountable. If you come to public office, you cannot say that I will only serve the male portfolio, whether it is promotions for male party members, whether it is fielding candidates. If you're going to empower women in all other ways, then you've got to mainstream gender in politics.
Thank you. Thank you for the response. May I invite Indian Amudan to ask his question?
First of all, I take this opportunity to thank all the learned members who have given the extremely great insights and advice in this topic. So my question to the panelists, so women's movement, if at all we have seen historically, we see that most of the women movement are based on demand-based mobilization. And we have seen this even in the voting patterns. The women vote mobilization has always been based on satisfying the needs and demands. Why isn't it an ideological movement for women's liberation? Women's movement has taken off. Why isn't an ideological movement for women's liberation has been propelled us, couldn't take off in mostly third world countries like India?
whom you are asking, Indian?
So, anyone in the panel, sir? Anyone in the panel? So,
I can add a couple of words. It is not true that ideological move, when you mean ideology, you mean gender as an ideology. Numerous movements have happened, both within states and smaller geographical areas and across India. For example, there was a huge movement towards pushing for the women's reservation bill to be tabled in the 1990s. And that is how, the women's reservation actually did get tabled more than 10 years ago. And it got tabled and passed in the Rajya Sabha. This is because of a national women's movement. And it didn't pass in the Lok Sabha. This was 33% reservation for women in parliament and assembly. So it is not true that women's movement have. In fact, I myself lead a movement, Shakti, to pressure political parties and the public for greater women's representation. And I would say that a lot of work by groups like ours is also part of the reason why in the Lok Sabha, for the first time, historically, we have 14% women, right? There's an uptick that we saw. The number of tickets given by major parties like the BJD in Odisha, like the TMC, we spoke about Mamata Banerjee, but, even YCP gave more tickets. In Gujarat, BJP gave more tickets. So that is part of the reason is women. And women have done movements for numerous things like the anti-alcoholism movement. There are million such movements that have happened, both for political rights and for other socio-economic rights.
so
I don't think mainstream media covers it as much as they did. In fact, that is one of Shakti's goals, is to mainstream the cause of women in politics. I don't think mainstream media even covers female politicians the way it should, right? Female politicians are often covered for when Nusrat Jahan and Mimi Chakrabarti entered the parliament from West Bengal, this 2019 elections, the front page said glamour quotient in the Lok Sabha. The same Lok Sabha also saw, your Sunny Deol and whoever, Gautam Gambhir. It didn't say glamour quotient, did it? So women don't get the coverage they should. Women's movements don't get the coverage they should. Women, or most often you see manels when you're discussing finances or economics or whatever it is. You don't hear women's voices. So that doesn't mean the voices don't exist.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other question?
I just would like to add to what Tara said. It's absolutely true. Because even in media, women are not allowed, or for a long time, they were not allowed to cover the beats that they usually, it's a beat system where it's like crime, they would just say, male should cover. Investigative journalism, men should cover. So there's never been a participation. And only in the last 5 years, or I would say 3 years, you've seen the change where women are conducting panel discussions, where they're heading the panel discussions, and they're able to be more participative. But having said that, like Tara said, there's always been a push. I mean, so many historic movements in the country, especially in Tamil Nadu, like how I mentioned, they wore the sari. It was an anti-Hindi agitation, and thousands of women wore sari with the Tamil flag. So it has been happening. It's not that there has not been movement or there has not been people talking about it, but it's just that it doesn't get enough coverage, and people do not want to discuss about it. And that's what has been happening in our country.
In fact, the anti-CAA, NRC, NPR movements, you just saw an incredible number of young women lead the movements and put together the protests, right? It was just an incredible burst of young women taking an overtly political stance. And, if you're running a political party fishing for female leaders, that's a great source of leadership to draw from. We have 10 lakh elected local government representatives who are women today across the country. Even if only 10% was good, if you think that 90% of that 10 lakh women, right, are rubber stamps, okay, this is ridiculous statistics. But if you were to think that 90% of the 10 lakh women are rubber stamps and only 10% are good, that would still give you 10,000 women, which means Tamil Nadu alone will have, thousands of women to draw from if you look at the 25-year period of women being elected. And yet we don't look at it as a ladder to recruit women. And the one most important thing I want to say, and pass it on to Sowmya, MLA Sowmya as well, and Priyamvadha, you also wanted to say what. There is such a thing as critical mass, okay? As an engineering student, if I walk into a class with 100 guys and 5 girls, there is only so much we can do about raising issues, even if we don't have toilets, even if we are not treated with respect. It's very, very, very difficult. And MLA Sowmya talked about being a single woman representing all of Bangalore and one of so few women in the, and in Tamil Nadu, we have the same situation now, right? We have so few women. I'll leave with an example that in the Bihar elections, Shakti did a campaign just before the Tamil Nadu elections. And the MLC, they have a legislative council, and MLC from BJP, actually, she said in an open panel discussion, public panel discussion, that Bihar had had a series of rapes, gruesome rapes, gang rapes, and child sexual molestations. And there were about half a dozen women amongst several hundred men in the council and the assembly. And when the women raised this as a topic to discuss, get this, the men laughed. The male representatives laughed. Now, you are 10% or 15% or even 20% of the assembly. We are not, right? We are only 5% or 9%. And you raise an issue as gruesome, as violent as rape. First of all, why is that even a women's problem? Women are the survivors. Women are not the perpetrators. So I would put it squarely on the men to solve this problem. And yet when women raise it, they laugh. Now think, if 50% of that assembly was women, would the men laugh? Would they say this? Would they even need to bring it up as an agenda? Or would it automatically come up as an agenda? So there is such a thing as critical mass to driving change. And that is the very fundamental essence of the social justice movement. That is the essence of the Dravidian movement that says, if you don't have enough number of oppressed classes and castes educated, if you don't have enough number of oppressed castes, downtrodden castes, or backward castes in government jobs, in decision-making positions, you cannot change the fate of the state. The same goes for women. So don't take the one Indira Gandhi, the one Mamta, the one Jayalalitha and make it her problem.
I completely agree with Tara and Priyamvadha. Thank you for saying it out loud. It is so very important. I mean, let's not talk about politics alone. I mean, look at the number of, if you really want to see, I mean, just look at, I'm an environmental engineer by profession. I've also worked in the non-profit sector as well for the past, I would say, 15, 20 years. Most of the movements that have actually happened, not just in our country, but also across the world, are actually spearheaded by women, be it the environment movement. In fact, even, of course, the women's movement, child rights, and you name it. In fact, even in our own country, the LGBT movement as well. And I think it's just so important that, it's not that there aren't women available, but I think it's at the end of the day, it's about identifying, women. It's about giving space. It's about giving a voice. And, it's frankly speaking, there are, like Tara said right now, why is that? Sexual abuse. Why is it a women's issue? Ask any woman that you've met. Have they not faced any kind of sexual harassment on the streets or anywhere out there? I don't think I've met a single woman who hasn't faced it. And I think it's just so important that, even when you talk about history as well, unfortunately, because a lot of the history and including the law is written by men. So the women and their point of view and their contribution has been left out. And I think it's high time that we start. It's not about, unfortunately, people say that, you're a feminist. But what is feminism? I think it's about equality. It's about representation. And like she said, unless we have equal representation of everybody, of all castes, of all class, of gender, and I think we have a long way to go, in social justice. It's very I feel so proud to see that the youngest one, the New Zealand Prime Minister was 34 years old when she became the Prime Minister for the first time, and she dealt with the pandemic, and there was also, I think, a terrorist attack, and I think a volcano, and she gave birth and became a mom at the same time. And this is not just in one country. There are so many other European countries as well. And I think even in our own country, you can actually see when you find them. And it's very nice to see. There is a 21-year-old mayor in one of the countries in South India. And I think when we talk about various issues, I think I really want to say that, I mean, a country has only progressed when the women of any country has progressed as well.
I was just going to talk.
Please unmute. Priyamvadha, please unmute.
Yeah, thanks. When we talk about these movements where women have come in large numbers, either during Nirbhaya time or during during the recent anti-NRC and CA movement, we have seen a lot of these young students who have been harassed, abused through social media. They've been given rape threats. I think that's one issue that at least the panelists here can start discussing about, the politicians can start discussing about, the sexual harassment that's happening online for women. Imagine physically we are not being able to participate is one issue. When we come out and participate, when our youngsters come out and participate, and this is what you face because you have this power of anonymity on the social media, and it takes really long time to punish the social media abusers. And thankfully, recently in Tamil Nadu, few abusers who have been abusing women on the social media for many number of years have been arrested. But it took so many number of years. So it is not that easy. I think this is something that we need to address immediately. At least women have the voice to come out and protest, voice to talk about politics. I've had personal experiences in political panel debates when I sit on television news channels. I'm probably one of the only or sometimes one of the two women panelists. And when I see the comments below, it's either about the way I look, it's about the extra lipstick I have used, or it's about the hairstyle and not about the points I have made on the debate show. And that's very disheartening because that's how even a women politician is looked at, a women media person is looked at, and everyone is looked at.
I want to make a quick point. Anuradha had asked a question, but I do want to make a quick point about, and this is a request because I see TKS Ilangovan Avargal has joined, and Pugar, I would also request you to take it back to the party. Many people, I think two of the panelists at least mentioned, both Priyamvadha and MLA Sowmya, mentioned about this rubber stamp or proxy or women, men kind of substituting for women in the local government. So one thing I'd request you to take back is this. We can bring in laws to prevent this abuse from happening. According to, there is already IPC laws that talk about, Indian Penal Code laws that talk about impersonating a public officer, which is a crime in India. There are multiple laws. The state laws may also, legislation may also exist, but there is IPC legislation that clearly says impersonating a public officer is an offense. Now, we don't take action based on that offense. If the male family member is acting in place of the local body representative, the woman, the panchayat, or a ZP or taluk, or whatever representative, then, and a citizen is able to provide videographic evidence, a recording of the male, the husband, the father-in-law, the brother, acting on behalf of her, conducting a panchayat meeting or talking to the officials, then police should be able to take action. This is not, and I see this horrible tendency to blame the woman for that. If this is the way she is being treated in public, can you imagine what her voice carries in private? Do you think she has the ability to raise it in her family and tell her husband, don't act on my behalf? Do you think what will happen to her? So if there is an offender and the offender is male, you cannot make it the victim's problem. You have to make it the offender's problem, and the law has to act on it. So I would request, very humbly request, that the Tamil Nadu government pass a government order or a law that says that impersonating a public officer as per IPC section is whatever is wrong. If any citizen is able to provide videographic evidence that in the panchayats, village panchayats, this is happening in place of a woman, and this will go a long way to empower women. This will really show that the DMK cares about women, that the men who are offending will be imprisoned, right? Action will be taken. I request that. And the second thing I will say is that when we talk about reservation and we say, oh, we don't want more rubber stamps, please rest assured that men cannot walk into the state assembly on behalf of the women. Men cannot walk into the parliament, into Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha on behalf of women. While men can certainly at the village level, talk to the contractor or talk to the official and appropriate some of this, men cannot do it at the state assembly or the parliament level. So women's reservation will help. If it doesn't solve by parties giving more tickets and reservation is the only option, then that's the only option to take.
So we have our Honorable MP through TK Selangon, who has joined now. Any questions, sir, or any comments? TK, sir?
He's on mute.
Sir, you're on mute.
I joined late, but I could understand the feeling of women. I, for one, always fought in my party that only women only women who are office bearers in the party, like a secretary, local secretary or a deputy secretary, should be made to contest in the elections, panchayat elections, so that they can act independently. But if I am the secretary of the unit, and that is a reserved for women, and if I made my wife to contest, then she will do whatever I say. She cannot act independently. So I, for one, had always been fought for the rights of the office bearers, who are active political office bearers in the party, to contest elections on behalf of the party in women seats reserved for women. That is one way of coming out of this problem. When a woman can independently do party work, she can also perform her function as a chairman of a municipality or a chairman of the panchayat, president of the panchayat. She can do that. But the party should make them to contest elections. That is one thing which I have been fighting for, and that is one thing. See, empowering women is giving power. This is not a political issue. See, the problem is, empowering women is not a political issue. It is more of a social issue, a religious issue, I can say in some cases. It is so, these people are bound by the social setup and the religious setup, and they don't want to give importance to women. So break that. Women can do anything. They are capable of doing what I can do. See, I can administer. You can also do that. Whatever I can do, you can also do. So there is no difference in capacity. And sometimes you may do better than what I do. So women should be given full powers. They should also allowed to function independently. And that should be the active idea of the political party, and for which they should make only party office bearers, women, to contest elections. Only then I think half of the problem will be solved. Husbands will not come in the place of women. They will not impersonate. Impersonation will be stopped only if active political women come to the post. That is one area which the political party should seriously consider. That is my one view.
Thank you, sir. So the next person is Dinesh. Dinesh.
Hello.
Can't hear him.
Can't hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Not clear, Dinesh.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have one question. I just want to know what is the current activities or plans which our current Tamil Nadu government has to provide employability to women, like skill development and stuff like that. A lot of women, if become more independent. And most of the men you see are already.
It's not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry for the poor connection. I think there's a network issue. I just want to know what are the development programs which are going to be given to women sector coming up.
Not clear, Dinesh. I think you can send your questions. We'll ask one of the panelists to respond.
Okay. I just put it in chat. I just put it in chat.
Please put it in the chat so that we can.
Yeah. It's already in the chat. Thank you.
Okay. If anyone else have any question, otherwise, I will just ask one more to Ms. Priyamvadha, because she was mentioning about the male dominance in journalism. In fact, I remember you have covered the Sri Lankan war on the ground. In fact, wars, ethnic conflicts, or internal conflicts are the domain of male members, but you broke the customary practice, and you are one of the very few female journalists who covered the war. During the wartime, how do you compare a war and a peacetime for women discrimination? Because during war, people will be only looking at their lives. So, does women face any serious discrimination, or in peacetime they face more discrimination than at wartime?
I think wartime is absolutely horrid for women. I can tell from my experience. I spoke to victims. I traveled to Sri Lanka in 2011, a year and a half after the civil war got over there, and I had met the victims and I had gone near few refugee camps there, and I think women face absolute. They have really horrifying stories because. Women are vulnerable in many ways during the wartime, especially how sexual harassment happens. So if I could just recall, even for me, the journey to travel from India to Sri Lanka to be part of do the coverage was quite a task, because there were so many questions raised even in the airport when I landed alone as a woman. So in the immigration itself, they asked me, "Oh, how come you're traveling alone? You're a woman. And why are you traveling alone to a war-prone area alone?" I said, "No, I'm a tourist. I've come. I had to tell. I can't tell them I've come. It was an undercover operation, so I couldn't tell them that I had come to cover the aftermath of the war." But what I heard was, I spoke to a lot of women. In fact, more women than men. There were many issues during the war that women faced. One, especially in the refugee camps, I still can't forget what that woman had told me. So the army personnel would hold the sanitary napkins and panties, which are essentials for any woman. And if the refugee who's there, if the woman wants it, she has to come and kiss that particular panty or the sanitary napkin to get hold of it. Otherwise, she cannot. So imagine pain she would be undergoing because of that. And I heard stories of how the young girls would be lying down. It's an open camp, they'll be sleeping, and suddenly they'll wake up to see that one of their friend who was lying next to them was taken away and raped. So rape was common, and it's always been in the history how military always uses women as one of the important tools to show the power and to show how to suppress the opposite camp, and that has happened. That was repeated. So women have always become the scapegoat during the wars, and they face maximum harassment during the war compared to any other time.
Thank you. Any more questions? If there are no questions, we can wind up the session. Anyone want to ask?
I think Carole had something to say, and she was trying to say something for quite some time.
Professor Carole?
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed all of your presentations. I thought they were very powerful and compelling, and just really enjoyed listening to the experiences. And I think there was a point that was made across all of the presentations, but one point that particularly came from Kalpana's paper, Professor Kalpana's paper, was that women often have a lot of political experience, but it's not always seen as the right kind of political experience by parties to actually give them kind of access to political office. And I think maybe kind of expanding that appreciation of the different kinds of political experience that women have. But also, I think the points that were made about that women are really interested in participating in politics, but they're often disincentivized by sort of gender-based violence in politics. Priyamvadha talked about kind of social media and online violence as well. And I just think kind of having a responsibility to address that directly and kind of make it a real symbolic, not just a symbolic gesture, but actively not tolerate that within a party or on behalf of your own candidates. I think that can be a really powerful thing to kind of try to address that and to incentivize more women to come into that space, because women do take risks. They do take risks to participate in politics, and actually to reduce some of those risks can of course try to encourage more women to come forward, even though plenty of women, as Tara mentioned, are already very interested in participating but don't always get the opportunity. But thank you so much for giving me the chance to participate in this. I've learned lots and I've really enjoyed all of the discussions that we've had, so thank you.
Thank you so much. So that comes to the end of the program. I really thank all the panelists, Ms. Tara Krishnaswamy, Ms. Priyamvadha Vijayakumar, Professor Carole Spary, MLA Sowmya Reddy, and Professor Kalpana for such an insightful speech, and also our special guest and Thiru T.K. Silango, an Honorable Member of Parliament, for joining us today, and all other attendees and panelists. Next time, as Ms. Priyamvadha said, we can also try and do a panel discussion with male members on the women's issue, but then again, she should not criticize us saying that it is a boys' club talking about females issue.
No, I'm talking about the right mix. You know, it need not be boys' club. I'm saying equal representation of men and women. So let's all sit and discuss. So this is not just our issue, right? It's the issue of all the women as well. So it's not going to be a boys' club. Let's have a quote.
Certainly, we'll do that. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.